Hey guys, it's Amy with Aim to Plan, and today I am back with another planner therapy video. So as you can see from the title of this video, today what we're going to be talking about is setting up a very specific time in your schedule in order to address anxiety that you might be experiencing during the day. One of the things that I find so important in terms of talking about anxiety is really understanding that anxiety, if we let it run out of control, it can really just become so overwhelming and consume so much of our day that we just forget to try to turn off the anxiety. Like if it becomes so overwhelming that anxiety just kind of takes over and it's in charge rather than us being in charge of our own anxiety. And so what we're going to be talking about today again is a very specific technique. I'll talk you through what it's all about, the purpose of it, and then really dive into what you should be doing during this specific time. So one of the things I wanted to show you before we jumped into it was this thing. You have not seen this on my channel, but this was something that I kind of walked through in a previous video. It's in fact the very first video in the planner therapy series. I'll link that so that way you can see it. And what I did in the video itself was kind of put together like a very functional version of this schedule. But what I decided to do was after the video kind of put together what for me is going to be what I call like an ideal schedule. These are all the things that I have to do in a given day, especially if I'm feeling unmotivated, depressed, anxious, or overwhelmed, right? Just like completely stressed out about life. What are some of the things that I have to get done? Now, what I talked about in that video was that we really have to focus on our physical health in terms of like addressing and making sure that we get enough sleep, that we make sure that we're eating, that we make sure that we have time. You can see eating here. And so the big things for me is making sure you get solid meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, as well as sleeping the correct number of hours. The other major thing that I talked about in that video was social support and the importance of social connections, and making sure that we schedule time in our daily ideal schedule. If nothing else, like if we don't bathe, if we don't shower, if we don't get the house chores done, at least we've made contact with humans in a specific day. So I'll put here, talk to my husband, talk to my daughter, text my husband, and then right here there's mindful parenting, spending time with my daughter. And I have here also call my mom. So that is it. Now, obviously, I also have to work. So working is something that goes on my schedule. It's not something that for me is a must. I definitely want to be able to at least get enough motivation to go to work and spend enough hours at work that I feel like I was productive. But if I had to, I could also call in sick. And so the things that I have to have on here are going to be the physical aspects of my life. That's all the stuff in green here, the must-dos, right? So sleep, social support, food, social support, food, social support, food, sleep, right? Which is part of the physical health. Now, one of the things that I didn't include on here, and the reason I'm referencing this, is that there is something that is not on here, and that is worrying the entire day. One of the biggest things that I struggle with is my anxiety. And so I have this red dot here, but on this list, I don't want to fill in all these empty spaces with anxiety. What I want to be able to do is pick a very specific time in my schedule. Again, this is what the red dot is indicating. I just haven't put it on here yet. What I have for that red dot is a very specific time frame where I will kind of squeeze all of my anxiety and put my anxiety in that specific time. And so I am going to call that specific time. Worry time. I'm actually going to move this dot and I'll replace that dot in a minute. But what I'm going to do is select a very specific time frame. I'm actually going to do it like right after dinner. But before like the wind down routine at our house. And in this red spot, again, I'll replace the dot here, is what I'm going to label worry time. Now, what is worry time? I'm going to switch over to this information right here, and we're going to walk through what worry time looks like. So this, as you know, if you've been following along with these videos, I just use like random outdated pages. Like I'm just here just to like stay functional and give you the information so that way you can follow along and create these for yourself. You can make it pretty using stickers, but certainly for me, in terms of doing this, I want to make it functional. All right, so what is worry time? Now, the very first thing, and you saw me do this in my own ideal schedule, worry time is very limited. The time frame that I selected was an hour-long block. Let me show it to you again. This time block that I selected is actually the 8 o'clock hour. And so because of the way it's listed on the schedule, it looks like a full hour. And if you feel like you need that much worry time, like you feel like your mind is so overwhelmed with anxiety that you would need an hour, feel free to select an hour, right? So what you have to do though is in your specific worry time, the very first step is you have to select a very specific time. All right, select a specific time in the day. It doesn't have to be like a very it doesn't have to be like exactly at 8 o'clock. But you definitely want it to be like either in the morning or the afternoon. I do encourage you to like be very specific with it, as specific as possible. I know for me, I also have a young child, so like I say 8 o'clock, but it could be moved to like 8:30, or it could be a little bit later, just depending on what's going on in the day. But the goal here is to select a specific time. For me, my time is 8 o'clock. Right, 8, and I put PM just so I know it's PM. Okay, so it's 8 o'clock at night. The other big thing is this specific time has to be limited. So make sure that the time that you're spending is going to be an hour or less. I say start with an hour. If you feel like an hour is too much time, then you can reduce it over time. But it's better at this point to schedule a specific hour in your day and then kind of go backwards in terms of reducing it. So don't just schedule 15 minutes and then feel like you needed more time. Okay, so start off with an hour and then you can reduce it from there. All right, so those are the first things. Now, here is the goal. You have selected a specific time. You've given yourself an hour or less in order to worry. The third and most important step is to do all of your worrying in this hour. If, for example, I'm going through my day and something happens at 10 o'clock in the morning where I'm just like, oh no, like that's like super stressful to me. There's something going on and I have to like think about it. I need to like just really like freak out maybe a little bit, panic, feel anxiety about it. Now that I've developed this worry time, I have to say to myself, and this is the goal for you, is to be able to say to yourself, no, 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 no. If it's not something that I have to immediately address, like, I mean, did you just get into a car accident and you have to resolve it in that moment? If that's the case, then yes, obviously you're going to deal with it. But what you're going to do is take the worry, the anxiety, the stress that you feel about it in that moment and move it to worry time. Okay, so I'm going back to the example of the car accident. If you're in a car accident, you need to deal with like some of the physical, like the damage to the car. You need to deal with all the practical things like exchanging insurance information, but you do not have to worry about it in that specific moment. You handle all the practical physical business that you need to do in that moment with the car accident. You worry about it later during worry time. So hopefully that gives you a better example or a better understanding of what I'm trying to explain here. The worry, the stress, the anxiety goes into this period, okay? And so worry time is a very specific time, short in time frame, and you do all of your emotional, like all that emotional labor of like worrying and stress and anxiety in this specific time frame. Okay. So we're all planners here. You're here because it's planner therapy. So what should your worry time look like? In this designated time that you have, what are some of the things that you should process? Now, there are two main tips that I have for you. The very first tip, strategy number one, oops, this is like I've been talking too long. All right, tip number one is to do what I call free writing. All right, it's also a term from English, right? So what you're gonna do is just free write, or like stream of consciousness, just free write all of your worries. Take out just a blank sheet of paper, a happy planner, an old one like I have here, and just kind of like write, list if you need to, of all the worries that you have. If you have an hour, you can spend the entire hour just writing out all the things that are on your mind, all the things that you're worried about, all the things that you're stressed about, all the things that you're anxious about. Just write them all out. So that's the very first tip. It's a good strategy for you if you feel like your mind is just completely overwhelmed with it and you just won't be able to sit and have something more guided. So if you need like just like a brain dump of all of your stress and anxiety, this is a good way of kind of starting it off. Now, for me as a professional, like when I work with my clients, one of the things that I ask clients to do is have at least one day in their worry time, like every day, one day a week where they are just free writing. Okay, so you don't have to free write every single day, but certainly I want you to be able to free write at least once a week. Okay, so try to free write. If it's your very first time doing it, try to free write the very first day, and then just every week or so, just try to go back and free write and just list out all of the worries, all the anxieties, all the stressors that you have in your life right in that moment. Okay, and so that's the first strategy, is just to free write. Pull out a sheet of paper, just brain dump all the things that you're worried about in a moment. Now, again, you have an hour here. What I find, and you'll be surprised, that is once you get all these things down on paper, you might have some room still left in your hour. Okay, you might feel like it would take an hour to write everything down, but you might be surprised that it only took you like 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes to write all of your worries down. So what you can then do is, now that you've free written and just like listed out all of your worries, you can move to the second strategy. And the second strategy, tip number 2, right, is to be able to recognize some of the triggers and some of the like emotional outcomes of your anxieties. All right, so you're going to address for your anxieties. What you will do is pick a specific anxiety, or pick a specific worry that you have, like something that, like as you look at your list of free writing over the past week, what is something that's like super burdensome to you, like something that really stands out, is something that you have been stressing out about like the entire week. Okay, I'll just give you an example. For me, I have really been stressing out about like grades. I am a professor, and so like I'm trying to get all of my grades in, and it's just really been something that's super anxiety provoking for me. I just constantly am like at night laying in bed thinking about grading. I have bad nightmares about grading. So when I free write, I list grading multiple times. Like I could write grading and then I'll move on to some other anxieties, and then I come back and I have grading again, and grading just comes up as kind of a recurring theme. I've written it multiple times. And so for me, I would pick this specific worry, grading, all right? And for that specific worry, what are some of the things that you need to write out about it, all right? At first, or like not first, these are like in like connection with each other. What you need to address with this specific worry is the trigger. Like, what are some of the external things like in the environment outside of you that kind of lead to this specific worry? For me, again, using the example of grades, the big thing here is the end of the semester, and there's an actual deadline where I have to turn in grades. Okay, so the trigger here is that I'm approaching a deadline. What are some of the physiological or physical responses that you have? Like, how does your body feel when you think about this particular worry? For me, I start getting like really nervous. My heart starts racing. I get kind of sick to my stomach, right? So these are some of the physical signs of this specific worry for me. You should also then include some of the emotional or mental signs, right? What are some of the things that you notice that you start doing, all right? I meant to write mental signs here, all right? So mental. What are some of the things that you start doing in order to kind of like address or like avoid the worry? So again, for me, emotionally, mentally, some of the things I do is I procrastinate. I just kind of like stop thinking about grading, or like I think about grading, I stress out about grading, but then I just won't grade, right? So I just avoid the actual task of grading when I'm stressed out about it. Some of the other things that happen for me is that I become a lot more frustrated. I become more stressed out. It's one of the reasons why it's really important for me to have this daily schedule. For me, when I become stressed out, I tend to like procrastinate so hard and like become less motivated. And so if I can like put myself into a corner and just work for a solid 3 hours, that is really helpful for me. And I know it's only like a 3-hour period. I can just get it done. And if I don't finish, I can just do it the next day. Okay. So those are for me, some of the emotional and mental signs of anxiety with this specific worry of grading. Now, as we walk through these tips, again, like let's just keep in mind, worry time is a specific time that you've given to yourself every day. It is a specific time frame, should be an hour or less. And in the course of your day, anytime you feel worried or feel anxious or feel stressed out about it, you should remember that you have a designated time to worry about it and do all of your worrying during that time frame. Now, 2 strategies to handle or like to work through your hour or less of worry time is, the first thing is, especially if this is your very first time doing it, just take a list, write down all of the worries that you have. I would put grading, I would put dealing with my daughter, thinking about summer break, grading again, dealing with some emails that I have that are kind of big projects that I have going on. I have several projects that I would list out by name. And so I would just spend some time, especially in the very first like go round of like putting together a worry time, I would just list those all out. Just list everything in like, just make a list. And you will be surprised, I think, that some things start rising to the surface as the most important worry for you. And so if there's a specific worry that's really, really kind of like hitting you hard, like that's the one that you're most stressed out about, most worried about, most anxious about, then you move to step 2 or tip 2, which is to pick that specific worry and then talk about some of the outside sources, the triggers that you have for that worry. Where does the worry come from? And then talk about some of the physical, emotional, and mental signs of that worry. Now, that's pretty much at this point the end of this step. End of worry time. For me as a planner, I would use a separate notebook for this. I would not want to put this in my planner. It looks kind of messy. It's kind of ugly. It has like some like anxieties and worries that I don't necessarily want to carry around with me on a daily basis. And I also think it's good just to be physically distant from it. And so I encourage you to put this in a separate notebook. It could be an outdated planner, kind of like what I'm using here. But really just put it in a separate spot. Know that for me, at 8 o'clock or at whatever time you've designated, you're going to pull out this particular notebook, journal, planner, whatever it is, and you're going to be able to look through all the things that you've already written. And especially if you keep up with this consistently, you'll see that over the course of time, you will be able to write out some of your worries in a way that shows you what are some of the issues that are coming up for you. Are you procrastinating? And then it gives you a sense of how to tackle it. Now, for me, this kind of is the heart of like how we at least handle and acknowledge our worries. As a mental health therapist, I really think it's important for you to be able to find strategies to address the anxiety itself. But it's kind of beyond the scope of this video. I do want you to at least have something that's planner related that can help you journal out and write out your worries in a safe and like designated spot for you. But in terms of like how to deal with the anxiety itself, your planner, beyond serving as like a dumping ground for all of your tasks and your events, it could be a place for your anxieties. And then if you need anything in addition to that, certainly I would encourage you to consult with a counselor or a therapist so that way they can kind of walk you through some very specific, individualized, tailored to you strategies for how you can take these physical signs, take these emotional signs, take these mental signs that you're dealing with anxiety, and how can you use those things to kind of tackle head on and learn how to cope with your anxiety in a healthy way. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment if you haven't done so already, letting me know if this is something that you're thinking about implementing in your life and what questions you have about it. And I will be back next week. My live stream right now is kind of like wonky just because of my internet service being really, really bad. So I will be, for the foreseeable future, recording videos for planner therapy, but I hope that this version of it is still as helpful to you as the live streams. And until the next video, bye guys.